We live in an era where scientific understanding and innovations have taken us to the stars. Though we've learned so much about our universe, many stories of unexplained phenomena exist that not only confound the senses, but make us question our very reality. These are the universe's untold tales. Pyro is an unforgiving system where life is constantly under threat from intense solar flares. First visited in 2493 by nav jumpers sent by the mining company Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, the expense of overcoming the system's unforgiving conditions bankrupted the business in 2563. Some analysts argued this outcome was predictable because of the company's overtly aggressive expansion plan, but others have come to believe failure was written in the stars and prophesied by a mysterious force known as the Prophet of Pyro. The year is 2548. Pyrotechnic Amalgamated workers deep within a mine on Pyro 2 first reported hearing a strange voice. Site supervisors didn't give the stories much weight until the workers refused to enter that mine, claiming the voice kept whispering, "Leave or be crushed." One miner even wandered off in search of the voice and suffered a severe injury from a fall. Following this incident, the site supervisor ordered a complete sweep of the mine and check all mining suits and communications equipment. When nothing strange or unusual was found, miners were told to get back to work or be fired. For years, workers claimed to hear a mysterious voice at odd times, but were placated by supervisors claiming it was only an auditory anomaly caused by the way air moved through the mine, or their own overactive imaginations. These incidents are the first recorded encounters with the Prophet of Pyro, claims Kiana Richards, an independent investigative journalist with an intriguing new theory about the Prophet. Richards has reviewed hundreds of comms and internal messages between Pyrotechnic Amalgamated employees in her search for precious details regarding the incidents. Some believe these stories were fabricated years later by company executives, the company's failings, but there's an extensive paper trail that proves something strange was definitely going on, she states. She continues, several miners even requested transfers out of fear that the voice was warning them of an impending collapse. While the mine never actually collapsed, Pyrotechnic Amalgamated did, crushed by the cost of building a station around Pyro 6 when the system's mines weren't as productive as hoped. The company did not survive. Still, enough workers experienced the phenomena that after Pyrotechnic Amalgamated crumbled, people began to believe that the voice was actually a warning to the company. According to Richards, that's how the legend of the Prophet of Pyro really took off. No one knows the origin of the name Prophet of Pyro, but it is commonly used within the system by the 27th century. Several derelict ships of the era have been discovered with intact black boxes containing comms referencing it. By then, the mysterious and prophetic voice had become part of the system's folklore. People believed the news stories enough to actively look for the alleged prophet, but there was one small issue. No one knew exactly which of the abandoned mines contained it. Richards continues, by the time the legend became widespread, most of the Pyrotechnic Amalgamated miners who experienced it firsthand had either left the system or died, she noted. Even the company's comms I've examined don't specify the exact mine, only the sector where it occurred, which contains about 100 different sites. Indeed, researchers that are checking on this situation certainly have their hands full. During the early part of the 27th century, several people claimed to have received a revelation from the Prophet of Pyro, but their tales did little to increase the legend. That is, until Tufo Fitzhugh claimed to have had an experience with the Prophet. It was a story that would go on to alter the system's history. Tufo led a small crew of ultra-violent outlaws known as the Abyss, who primarily targeted miners searching at Pyro 2 for overlooked deposits. Following one such operation, Tufo claimed a mysterious force drew her deep into the mine, where she repeatedly heard the words ruler of ruin. Convinced it was a revelation from the prophet of Pyro, Tufo told the Abyss that it was their destiny to take over Ruin Station, an extremely ambitious goal considering Ikebi Gang had kept the orbital platform under their iron grip for decades. Still, Tufo leveraged her steadfast belief in the prophecy to convince others to join her cause. In 2678, through a few strategic alliances and an impeccable plan that drew a significant portion of the ruling Ikebu gang directly away from Ruin Station, Tufo and the Abyss overtook the station in a surprise attack. They immediately locked down the station and successfully defended it from the remaining members of the Ikebu gang for nearly 3 weeks. When the dust settled, the prophecy had come true. The Abyss were the new rulers of Ruin Station. The Abyss coming to control Ruin was a milestone moment for both Pyro and the Legend of the Prophet, continued Richards. Previously, only the biggest gangs in the system fought for control of the station, but the Abyss upended that convention. We now know that was because of Tufo Fitzhugh, was a gifted intelligence gatherer and strategist who exploited the Ikebu's weakness. But the story spread contemporaneously was that this was all preordained by the prophet of Pyro, she finished. The shocking and sudden rise of the Abyss inspired other outlaw factions to dream big and seek the prophet of Pyro for a glimpse into their own destinies. Meanwhile, Tufo Fitzhugh and the Abyss proved to be better conquerors than rulers. Within a matter of years, Ruin Station was frequently under attack by other gangs hoping to unseat them. The constant fighting reduced Ruin Station to a wasteland, a fate that reportedly angered and confused Tufo, who returned to Pyro 2 in the hopes of receiving another divination from the prophet. It's unknown if she received it, as her ship was attacked and destroyed during her return. The Abyss lost control of Ruin Station shortly thereafter to a coalition of smaller gangs, who would in turn spend the next year fighting among each other over control of the station. That now infamous year, deemed the Fight of Five Gangs, cemented Ruin Station's status within wider popular culture as an extremely dangerous destination and perennial powder keg. According to Richards, 3 of the gangs who fought for Ruin control were claimed to have received the blessing of the prophet. Clearly, public belief was significant enough that these gangs thought the endorsement of the prophet was essential to their claim to power. Richards notes there's no evidence any of these gangs even searched the minds of Pyro for the prophet, and she believes their claims to be nothing more than political propaganda. Meanwhile, after a decade of intense research, Richards is ready to reveal the exciting new theory about potential source of the prophet of Pyro. She states, I've spent years cataloging all references to the prophet of Pyro. When I charted them, a clear pattern emerged. Interestingly enough, stories of encounters with the prophet seem to spike significantly when a strong solar flare strikes the system. Richard's research showed intense solar flares hit the system when pyrotechnic amalgamated miners first heard the voice, and occurred again in 2678 when Tufo Fitzhugh claimed to have experienced her revelation. Is it merely coincidence or a potential key to unlocking the mystery behind the prophet? Richards admits she wasn't the first to ponder this connection. One pyrotechnic amalgamated technician had presented this theory in a message to company executives, stating that the mysterious voice might be the result of auditory anomaly caused by the interplay between intense solar flares and the metal-rich mine. Richards uncovered the exchange during her research, but her initial inspiration came from a more modern source. Richards states it started when I was researching the fire rats for an article on behaviors of cult-like gangs. It's widely known that one of the fire rats' initiation rites involves exposing oneself to a solar flare as a form of purification. But I also discovered that some long-standing members of the gang would vanish during times of intense solar flares. So I set out to see exactly what they were doing. And what Richards discovered via dogged investigation and confidential interviews with current and former fire rats was that enlightened members of the gang often visited Pyro 2 during times of intense solar flares to commune with the prophet. Richards noted that no one I spoke to with or would not confirm if these journeys were to a specific location, or simply the planet in general. But seeing them make this connection inspire me to analyze the historical data around reported encounters and solar flare activity to see if they had any merit. After a decade of hard work, I truly believe there's a connection. So while the Fire Rat's beliefs surrounding the prophet remain a closely held secret, Richards herself's research has led to develop the theory that she does not believe the prophet of Pyro is confined to one special mine on Pyro 2. It is the belief that there is powerful bursts of energy produced by solar flares that are somehow collected and amplified by the large metal deposits inside the mines. Meaning, when conditions are right, the prophet of Pyro can be heard in several spots around the planet. When Untold Tales returns, Kiana Richards travels to Pyro 2 during a period of intense solar flare activity to put her theory to the test. All right, this was posted on Spectrum, Comlink, etc. On April 20th of this year, 2022. The Prophet of Pyro and the research done by Kiana Richards. Very fascinating story. I dug this one up because I wanted to go back into the Pyro folklore. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a big cast. It's just me reading these sometimes. Believe it or not, if you only have 50 views on a video, it's kind of hard to convince people to come do voiceovers for you. So, kind of tried to take it a little bit beyond that and twist a little bit of what one of my favorite of my childhood shows, The Twilight Zone, into the story. So before I go back into the StarCitizen talk for a moment, I just wanted to note that I love these kind of stories. Lure Team, the tongue twisters were a heck of a challenge in this one. Pyrotechnic amalgamated being repeated like, I don't know, 10 times, 12 times in this article is a real kicker. And there's a few more in there. The name, Tufo's name as well. Tufo's name is quite a challenge. I don't do bloopers, but the bloopers probably would have been as long as this recording. So if you hear any hard edits, please, everyone, please cut me just a little bit of slack on this one. I'll include a link to the original text version of this into StarCitizen Talk for a moment. I think this is interesting mainly because we have a lot of stories about who owns Rowan Station, how Ruin Station came to be so messed up, and the whole army of gangs that are in it. And I like the excitement of starting to learn a little bit more of Pyro's history. I'm certainly going to be checking out Pyro 2 now, and I might even be able to get some mining done. Some of my friends may convince me to go down there and do some mining. That would be a wonderful Easter egg if CIG sneaks some stuff in for that. Maybe nothing special, but just if it sounds like a whisper in the background you can't make out, that'd be swell. I don't know if they'll actually do that, but it'd be fun. The solar flare technology solar flares mixing with the technology of mining and the mining deposits themselves, really cool. And I think that, yeah, a lot of these things are interesting. We saw some concept art I cannot share with you because it's locked behind subscriber paywalls. But we saw some concept art for some of the more interesting gangs in Pyro. And basically, they have clothing that is exposing their solar flare injuries with pride. So part of the initiation into the gang, like for example, the Fire Rats, was that they would have these parts of their body that were exposed and where they had severe radiation burns to the point of like injuring themselves severely. They would purposely like take the armor and cut that piece out to show that off, to show how hardcore they are. So just to understand how severe these NPC pirates are and their ilk, if you don't like them, you have to give them some level of respect for having that level of dedication to their cause. Must be really awkward though if they survive long enough to get out of there and they reform themselves, and that would be kind of interesting to see. Maybe a small outpost somewhere that's like just really calm in Stanton. It's all like pirates that turn good after their time in Fletcher, and they've all got like severe injuries from like their own actions. That'd be kind of interesting. But that's just my speculation. I mean, somewhere these gangs have to go after they're not in their prime fighting form. The ones that make it, unlike Tufo Fitzhugh, that some of them will live. So who knows? So yeah, fun stuff. Fleshes out the universe a little bit more. Every single one of these is great. Thank you for sticking around with this one and having, like I said, please have a little bit of patience. This one was a tough one. But The Prophet of Pyro, I believe, is a story that deserves to be told. I'm a huge fan of the Twilight Zone in general, so I thought this would be fun to kind of twist it at least a little bit like that. And yeah, I want to thank you all again. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. To those who are already subscribers, thank you so much for sticking around. And also, thank you for the kind words about my different attempts at lore dramatic readings. I have only have a few different voices, and I'm just constantly trying to hammer them in. I have one I'm keeping in my back pocket. It's a certain CEO of a certain ship company that I'd like to bring to the surface for something very, very special. And basically, my idea is to have a dramatic read backed up by wiki articles. So every single thing in there is legitimate, obviously, with only tiny, tiny liberties taken. My goal is always to try to bring these to life without impacting lore in any way, shape, or form. And I hope I do that justice. I hope I really am able to bring these new content things to place. And I encourage the CIG lore team to please release more of these old articles from the old jump points. It would mean so much to so many. And I think the burgeoning lore front, it's not just readings like mine. It's people that want to explore these, discuss them in public, link them on Reddit in a clean way. And there's years of back catalog that really should be brought out into the light, especially seasonal topics or exciting things around certain events like IAE and Jump Week, Fleet Week, etc., whatever you want to call it. It would be really great to see those. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks again for sticking around, everyone, and fly safe.